Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is up the top. We are learning to calculate the probability of greater than events using a binomial distribution. And the context I want us to focus on is finding one of those lucky elusive four-leaf clovers. While I was prepping for this video, I actually did a bit of research to find the exact probability of one of these clovers. And the probability, it's really small. It's why the Irish consider it lucky. The probability of picking clovers and one of them being four-leaf is 1 in 10,000. And as a decimal, 0.0001. So that's a pretty unlikely thing to happen. And what I want us to picture is, let's say we've got a house, there's the window, there's your door, and in front of your house, you've got a garden with thousands and thousands of clovers. And, well, to be exact, we're going to pretend that there are exactly 50,000 clovers in there. And what you're going to do is you're going to check every single clover to see how many four-leaf clovers you'll be able to find in your garden or in those 50,000. And we're going to consider the probability of certain events happening after you've checked all of those events, or every single clover. So the first thing I want us to discuss is, well, what's the probability of getting at least one clover? So I guess the idea is you want to consider yourself lucky, like the Irish, and at a minimum you want to find one clover. So at least one four-leaf clover. So what will the probability of that be? So let's do our number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to carry on at least one. Well, that would probably include one. So we're going to circle, it would be 1 or above. But the only issue is, like the other percent modes, the calculator only works from left to right. So what we're actually going to have to do is we're going to have to find the probability of the beginning group, and we're going to have to use the 1 minus p trick to find the probability of the top group, or one or more. So let's think of that last group. Well, that group is only x equals 0. And the number of trials, well, that's 50,000. And the probability of finding one, well, that's 0.0001. And we're actually going to use the binomial point mode because we're looking for a specific point because we're dealing with x equals 0. Got my calculator here. Once I've put them in, so x is 0, n is 50,000, and probability 0.001. That means the probability of getting exactly 1, so probability of exactly 0, was 0.0067. So given the size of the garden, I'm probably going to be finding a four-leaf clover. So what that means is the probability of finding one or more would be 1 minus that probability. And that would become 0.9933. And that number was rounded to 4dp. So in all likelihood, I'm not really lucky. I'm just dealing with probabilities. I'm probably going to find a four-leaf clover in that 50,000 clover garden. Let's get rid of that example. Let's think of some other scenarios. Or maybe I want to consider myself really, really lucky. So based on that, I'm probably expecting to get 5 four-leaf clovers. But I wonder, what's the probability of me getting 8 or more four-leaf clovers? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to clear our work, and we're going to have a look at 8 or more. Okay, so I've got our new question up there, 8 or more. We're going to start off, as always, let's draw a number line. So I'm going to go all the way up to 10 with some ... dots, just to suggest that it keeps going. 10 ... And we're looking for the probability of 8 or more. So there's 8. And normally the question is, do we include 8 or do we exclude 8? In our case, 8 or more, suggesting 8 is definitely something we're interested in. So let's circle 8 or more. And to calculate that, we're actually going to have to do the 1 minus p trick, where we calculate everything else below it. And the highest number in that below range will be 7. So that means our x value will be 7. The number of trials, that's still 50,000 because we're going to be looking at all 50,000 of those clovers. And the probability of that 4-leaf clover, well, that hasn't changed. That's still 0.0001. And what we can do is, from that, we'll be able to calculate what's the probability of having less than 8. And another way you could have written that is what's the probability to have 7 or less clovers. And both of those, when you put that into your calculator using the BCD mode, that comes to 0.8666. So that means most likely I'm going to be finding 7 or less clovers. And then we haven't finished yet, because that's just the probability of that bottom group. We then need to do the 1 minus trick to find the probability of the top group. So let's go. The probability of there being 8 or more is equal to 1 minus 0.8666. And that's going to be 0.1333. And that's rounded to 4 dp. So that's about 13%. So relatively unlikely to find 7 or more clovers within that garden. So you genuinely will consider yourself lucky if you do find 7 or more. So let's go bigger. Maybe I want to find 10, more than 10 4-leaf clovers. Let's get into that question. So I'm going to pause this. Make sure you get that working down, and we'll get into our next question. More than 10. Okay, so we're going to do our number line again. So 1, 2, let's skip to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, ... carry on. So we're doing more than 10 4-leaf clovers. So in that number line, well, there's 10. Now the question is, do we include 10? Is 10 more than 10? In this case, I don't think it is. 10 is equal to 10, but it ain't more than 10. So that means we're actually interested in 11 or more to satisfy this condition. But again, we only work from left to right, so we've got to find the probability of the lower group and then do 1 minus p to find the probability of that upper group. And in that lower group, 10 is the highest value that we've been given there. So x is going to be equal to 10. We then got to run through the number of trials. Well, that's still 50,000 because you're going to be looking at all 50,000 of those cloves. And the probability, that's still 1/10,000 or 0.001. When you put that in your calculator, the probability of getting 10 or less, so 10 or less, that is quite high, 0.9863, and that was rounded to 4 dp. So most likely we're going to be finding 10 or less. And that means the probability of finding more than 10 will be 1 minus that probability. And that would be 0.0137. And that was rounded to 4 dp. And as a percentage, that's 1.37%. So pretty unlikely for us to find 10 or more 4-leaf clovers in that garden, and that would probably consider yourself lucky if you did find that. So hopefully you found today's video on 4-leaf clovers and greater than percent of binomial distribution questions video useful. Now, if you haven't got those examples, please get them down, and then let's get into some questions.